Good Friday. It's Good Friday if you can't tell. My name is Nick. I'm here with Zach and Caleb. You're watching the Blackbar podcast, and Zach is currently getting a lot of.
We've already got a guest.
Yeah,
This is
that wasn't
Juno.
the planned guest today.
Oh, we're not a planned guest. He's camera shy.
Aw, hey Juno.
Oh, come on. This is the Blackbar podcast. We're professionals. I just have my dog on screen. Let's do this, gang.
Absolutely. Oh my god.
Oh,
Wow.
man. Wow. Guys.
Caleb, how you doing?
Oh,
Well, now that we are a solid hour beyond when we were originally supposed to get here because of all the technical difficulties we've been running into, I feel great. I'm glad we're finally getting this thing
I
going.
hear you.
is it really
broadcast-
a broadcast if there's no technical difficulties? I think we just have to accept them and just flip a coin to see which one of us it's going to hit.
Well, it hit all the coins today. Today's broadcast is actually pre-recorded. We recorded this on Tuesday instead of today on Friday, just because we know it's Good Friday and everyone has a lot of other things going on as well. So today's broadcast is pre-recorded, and you'll see that there might be some editing and some other things done, but otherwise this is live straight through.
And if you are sitting in your tech booth or production studio working and color grading or waiting for an export and you decided to join us, then welcome, friends. You're in good company. You're in good company.
Happy Good Friday. And the best of good luck to all of your productions.
May the odds ever be in your favor.
Right.
May your knife chip and break.
May thy
knife chip and shatter.
Oh my gosh.
The time.
So we got an episode. What is our what's our topic for the day other than us just extending this intro?
Yeah. So we have a guest on today. We have Troy Picou. He is the kids pastor at Grand Rapids First, where Caleb and I used to work. We've had about 7 years experience working with Pastor Troy there, and he is the man who can make anything. Literally, this guy can. You give him anything, and he can make whatever you want from it. Does that sound fair, Troy?
At this point, I think I can make something. Definitely. I mean, it may not look, Hollywood, but we can make something.
I don't know.
I'm very curious about what you're going to be able to make with all of the smoke that we're blowing up your butt right now. Just very curious with that.
I mean, the ultimate question is
never mind. Smoke signals. But Troy, you have experience in just about every medium that I can think of, whether that be physically creating things, obviously working in children's ministry in puppets, but also in sets. And also in the digital world, whether that be design or music or 3D modeling or animation or video or photography or whatever, you seem to have just as bad a case of ADHD as I do, if not more.
Come on. True.
And we're not talking napkin doodles. We're not talking taking scissors and cutting out a trash bag. This is some good stuff, guys. I haven't seen all the pictures today. We've got pictures, we got examples, and I'm excited to dive in and be blown away by the men who can create anything.
We've seen some of what Pastor Troy can do. Zach's going to be seeing some of these things for the first time today. So
yeah.
We're anticipating good things.
I'm curious. I mean, me and Nick might know more story than most, but for everybody else, how in the world did you start doing all of this? Where do you get interested in this kind of stuff?
It started when I was a kid. My parents would buy me toys and I would build something out of the box. The toy ended up in the toy box and the boxes I ended up creating. So I always found a fascination since I was a kid with creating something from nothing. That's always kind of been the thing that got my energy going, is to be able to create something from nothing. And it's just kind of carried on. I love to try new mediums. So, but I am the type of guy that if I get something and I really like it, I'm all in. both feet all in. I'll find an excuse to buy the equipment I need to make it happen. I'm blessed to have an incredible wife that supports me and all that.
That was gonna be my question.
Bless her.
Yep.
Have you bought her in?
She helps me out. She's always been by my side to help make it all happen. So I'm blessed in that way. But yeah, I love it. I know we're going to talk more about it later in the show, but it's really the thing that helps me. It's the thing that fills my cup. A lot of people find golf, fishing, whatever, but creativity is the thing that fills my cup. So that's why I do it mostly, just to keep myself full. But it just so happens that I can use it all for the job that I do as well. So it's a win-win, but there again, it's not. So
Right. And I know we're gonna spend some time.
I'm hearing you don't have to pay for all of it, which feels like a win to me. You get to play, but it's not all on your bill. Maybe
that is true, and that's what helps make it happen as well, right?
Right.
Because if it was all coming out of my pocket, I probably wouldn't do half of the things that I do.
The kids minister position is just a front for the budget to be able to make.
I cannot confirm or
Right.
Yeah, I was gonna say, don't let the board know that.
No, I know we're definitely. I want to spend some time talking today because there's definitely plenty of people. Probably most of our the people who listen to this create something on a weekly basis, whether that is graphics, whether that be video, whether that be mixes, whether that be sermons, and I think it will be hard for some people to understand just how much time and effort goes into what it is you make. And I'd be interested in talking about how you justify some of the time that it takes to make everything. But I think, so you started off in physical mediums specifically, it sounds like. Digital came a bit later.
Yeah, well, honestly, digital wasn't even a thing when I was growing up.
That's fair.
I grew up in a different generation from you guys. So all we had was pencils and paper,
Right.
cardboard and knives and glue. So that was where we started. It really wasn't until I got married that I got my first computer and actually started in the digital realm. So, and that was in Microsoft Paint. And I learned to draw with a mouse. So I'm dating myself here. My first computer had 4 megs of RAM.
Oh, good night.
And I thought I was the man.
Yeah, I believe it.
Now I don't have one art file that could fit on that computer.
No,
Jeez,
not a
crazy.
single one.
Not a one.
Wait, I'm curious. Before we get into like the digital and like the present, were you a Lego kid or like Roblox or anything like that? No?
No.
Roblox.
Yeah, Roblox.
Definitely did not exist.
Listen, I'm giving the benefit of the doubt.
We had Lincoln Logs.
Oh, okay. There you go. I'm with that.
Back in the Stone Age.
Yes. We had Legos. I just wasn't a Lego kid. So
sure.
Right. So we have a handful of photos. You've given us plenty of examples of stuff your work, and I'm just going to bring some of them up at random, and I want you to tell me what it is we're looking at.
Okay.
And why was it made, and what can it do that this photo isn't showing? And
just keep in mind our audio only audience.
Sure.
They won't fully be able to see what our video team is seeing.
Let's look at this little guy. Tell me about this little Wally looking dude here.
Exactly. He was built for a campaign we did here at the church called Grow, which is our core values. And he's called Groby, and he's made out of different plastics. And so he's actually RC controlled. So he's got servo motors in it. His head turns side to side. He's got LEDs for eyes. It's an upside down bucket, if you like a planter. And then on top of that, you can see some other thing. The back side of him that extends out the back, you can't really tell in that picture, but that's mop buckets turned upside down. He goes about 25 miles an hour when you give him the juice. He takes off. He's got like I think 20 tracks of audio that I can call up on a
extremely cool.
So
are you sitting off like in the sound booth somewhere, just
exactly
moving around and talking to kids and whatnot?
Yep, exactly. And he
so this is around. Like a bucket meets a Hoover meets a what are those floor cleaners that people love right now meets a flashlight?
Roomba. Yeah,
Roomba. Yeah, that's
Roomba.
what we're seeing right now.
Exactly. Exactly. When I first built this, I had it attached to a shop vac, all the motors, and I took off down the street, 25-mile-an-hour shop vac on the street. And my neighbor came and talked to me a week later, and he said, my wife said, "Oh, honey, look at that vacuum cleaner going down the street." He said, "Oh, that's just the neighbor playing again." So.
Oh man.
So this will probably be a theme that people pick up on as we look through some of the examples of your work, but you definitely use a lot of recycled material stuff that's lying around that you have access to. I imagine some you're buying at Home Depot or whatever, but I imagine some of it you're just finding.
Yes, and that becomes an issue that my wife and I had to overcome. All the junk,
You have
all the
just a pile
junk
of unique trash in your garage.
Yes. So now at my age, I kind of figured out where I really like, things I like to do. So I'm starting to clear some of that junk out. But I've had junk that I've carried with me for years in boxes. In fact, another project that we'll probably be talking about later, I've carried those parts around for years, and finally I was able to make it.
Yeah. I think if I have a good guess at what project that is, that's going to be this boy, which is your basically life-size transformer that you managed to build.
Yeah,
Again,
for those that are listening, this is
children's...
literally a transformer. Like, imagine the Michael Bay film, and there's a transformer in a church. That's literally what we're looking at.
He's 14 foot tall, and he's made out of all recycled plastics. Wow. We have a guy in the church who owns a salvage yard, and I told him the dream of project I wanted to build. He said, "Well, come on, grab all the bumpers and parts you want." So we were able to go in and do that. He actually has servo-controlled head that would turn side to side, and it was on a loop. He had lights that would light up in the eyes and things like that. I mean, I look at it and I see all the incomplete parts to it, but
sure,
I was proud of him. I mean, he still stands in our kids ministry today. So
every artist, nothing we ever make is ever good enough for us, right? We're always going to be our biggest critic. So I imagine there might be a small handful of kids pastors listening to everything you're talking about today, and while they're scrounging together to make sure that they've got a sermon for Sunday, you're showing them a transformer you built for a point in a sermon, right?
It was a series that we did, and the whole theme was anytime you meet Jesus, you're transformed. And so I'm a visual learner, and so I wanted to paint that picture. So when kids see Transformers, which was when I built this, was a huge thing, Transformer movies. So I wanted them to know that every time you see that, you remember Jesus, he transforms us.
Yeah, so that goes along with sort of the question that I was aiming for there is like how out of all of the things that you could be doing whatever, like this is the thing that you aim to do, and you do it so well, but obviously it's very time consuming, and I have to imagine, considering you're still doing it, that it has, these kinds of things have had considerable impact on the kids that have come through your ministry, and that they're remembering things that they might not have otherwise because of some of these things they've seen.
I definitely think so. And as when talking with the kids, we always do a follow-up review. I mean, it's those type of things that they remember. I guess, I think we live in a more visual world than we've ever been a part of.
Most definitely.
The media is everywhere. And so I think if we can give them something visually along with a solid message to go along with it, they're going to remember it. So that's part of why I do it. Another part of why I do it and spend so much time in it, because like I was saying earlier, it's the thing that gives me a creative release when I do those things. It also fills my cup so that it keeps me going.
For sure.
I think doing ministry without something like that, I think we all have something that we find that we do that kind of helps keep our cup full. But doing ministry without something like that is a recipe for disaster. So
totally.
I guess with all the things that I've built, you guys think, man, this dude's stressed.
Probably, that'd be a good guess.
So there's a lot of things that we could unpack here, but I am curious, what exactly, we touched very briefly on it, but your background. So you're in pastoral ministry for children specifically.
Yep.
And then you also you've talked about servers and motors and, I think welding and crafting. how did you get to? I mean, those two seem like very different paths that you could go down. How did you arrive into that like mesh of things? Because I think what we often see, we see youth pastors, children's pastors who are asked to take on the media professional role on top of their already taxing children focused role. So like how did you arrive at this like middle place where you're getting to just create in this capacity?
I came to Grand Rapids first as the media marketing director. Kind of did what Caleb did here before Caleb, and so I came in as that. But growing up, like we talked about earlier, I started out as an artist, learning art and loving art and all those type of things. Felt the call to ministry later on in my high school years, and so. Really, I did youth ministry. I did music ministry for a while. I went to college. I was a major in music and all those type of things. And during those times is when, I really started to hone in on the things that I love to do, still being creative. But when I felt a call to children's ministry when my wife and I were pregnant with our first child, that's when it really hit that, oh man, I can use all these things that I love to do and reach kids. And it was the glove that fit my hand, and it was the thing that I love to do. So it brought it all together. So I know it's a hodgepodge. It's a weird life, but I mean, I am lucky. I get to do all the things I love to do and reach kids at the same time and do it for Jesus. I mean, it's a win-win-win.
I love that.
I've been scrolling through some of the examples of the many puppets that you have made. Obviously, kids ministry and puppets go together like peanut butter and jelly.
Certainly do.
And you are holding this art form alive, almost single-handedly.
For those that are listening, we've got fish, we've got monkeys, we've got aliens, we've got assorted different creatures, and we're not talking just like a little paper bag. Like this is in depth, like 3-dimensional pieces that people are inside of, that people are wearing, that people are supporting, like. I mean, we're looking at stuff that could have been straight out of like the Mythbusters or something like that. Like that's like a quality that you aim for, and we're seeing this for student ministries. So those are just some of the things for those that are listening of what we're looking at.
I'm curious, Troy. So I don't know if this is known information for the most part, but I come from a short line of puppet makers. I did not pick up the craft. But my family was involved in many puppet shows and created a lot of puppets. So I remember growing up around making puppets and sort of them putting them all together. And from what I remember, it is comparatively to some of the other things that you talk about here, a relatively low barrier of entry thing for someone who's interested in getting into creating in like a ministry context to be able to start just making stuff. Would you agree with that?
It can be because I definitely think anything, at least in my eyes, anything can be a puppet. And some of those pictures you showed, I mean, it's plastic, it's foam, it's proper puppetry, it's all that kind of stuff. So anything can be a puppet, and that's the thing I love to do is just make something that you wouldn't expect to be a puppet, bring it to life, make inanimate objects animate. So and use those things. So to me, anything can do it. So anybody can really jump in and make that happen. Even if it is a finger puppet or just something easy, fabric, whatever, that you can make that happen and be creative with it and bring a message to life that maybe would not have the same pizzazz if you just told it, by adding that extra, dynamic to it, will make a kid remember.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. There's one of the sermons of that I can remember that you worked, or the series that you worked on, and there was many. It seemed like dozens of fish that you had to make for this particular series. Yes. I can only imagine, comparatively less complex than some of the other things you made, but there's just a volume of it. I'm curious. How long in advance do you plan for? Are you a 6 weeks ahead? Are you like a 3 month ahead for, series that you got? Or does it change depending on what you got going on?
It does change depending on what we have going on. Now, I don't do the big series every series. And when we do a
Sure.
big series like the Transformer, that's probably 10 to 12 weeks of messages that's going to use that prop, because to build that took me 3 months to build,
Right.
off and on, nights, weekends, whatever time I can give any friend that would be willing to come hang out in my garage, and do that. So, but yeah, we got to plan ahead. If you're going to do anything big, you definitely got to plan ahead and make it happen. So 3 months of building time, but it's probably another month or two ahead of that, mentally planning, sketching, trying to figure out what's going to be the cheapest option, the quickest option, the best option to make it all happen. So, but that's my life. I live thinking that stuff, so it may not be for everybody, but I mean, like I said, that's what I love. The figuring out and trying to make all this design and happen is just as much fun to me as seeing the final product.
Yeah.
I love to be in the the ideation process and sketching in a sketch pad and thinking all this out. How is it going to all fit? Making the graphics to go with it. That I just love that stuff.
Trying to get take what you're saying right now and then take it that extra step of practicality. I think as creatives, it's really easy for us. If we break the creative process into ideation, activation, and implementation, it's really easy for us to get stuck in one of those channels. Maybe we're so excited about the dream that we have a hard time executing, or we're excited about the execution, but we have a hard time just sitting down and finishing it. On a practical, broad sense, what are some things that you've learned about navigating priorities and time investment into projects that have this kind of scope?
In the beginning, I always shoot for the stars. I go for big. Money is no problem. Time is no problem. I think, I draw, I study, I investigate all of it, and just try to find, and don't limit myself to anything. As I get into the project, of course, now I got to decide on budget. What can I actually spend to make this happen? I have a deadline set. We're going to start this series in, this month. So I know that I got this much time to make it happen. So those things start to kind of hone in what I can actually do. Now, I'll keep shooting for the stars and try to get all my ideas. But at some point, I just got to pull the trigger, and it's okay, it's done. I got to get it to at least a livable spot for me, and something that I think will be presentable and, people will still enjoy. And at that point, I just got to release it. That's why, like I said, with the Transformer, I see all the problems, because I was done. I had to set it up.
Right.
I was midnight that night, trying to do the last finishing touches before I could get it up. But but just managing those things, it does help that my family's involved. My kids grew up helping me with that stuff. They were not. I wasn't not including them. I tried to include my kids as much as they wanted to be a part. My wife was always there. So that does help. I can understand some people where if family's not involved and all those kind of things, it pulls you away from family, which is not a good thing, So that they came on that journey with me made it all possible.
Yeah, for sure. So when it comes time to decide that enough is enough, what are factors that you think about that, us creatives, rarely is our final product ever where we really, really want it to be, but we know the deadline's here. What are some factors that say, this is what I'm looking at to make sure that I'm going to close this well, and I'm going to maybe not compromise, but I'm going to be okay with what was created because it's still going to advance the mission? What are some factors along those lines that you kind of think about?
I start big strokes. So I know, let's say in case Transformer case. I need to have structure. I need to have all its parts, and it needs to be, defined as a transformer when people look at it, be able to see those kind of things. So I will make sure all of that's done first, and then the details, I will leave that to where, okay, if I can't put all these details, it'll still fly. It'll still
You're
be
not
good.
perfecting the entire right arm before you start building the left arm.
Exactly.
You have a skeleton first.
Yes.
And
then I build as I go, and I know that I can only do so much. And that way, when I do pull the trigger on it and it's done, that, hey, okay, that can fly as it is.
Sure.
Right.
So that's kind of how I approach each project. At least I try to. Now, this doesn't always work that way because I'll get caught. Like the head, I spent weeks on the head because
Sure.
it's
Sure.
got to be right. The head's got to
Right.
be right. This
Right.
water gun didn't work. How about this one? And just trying all the different parts. So, but yeah, so just getting to that place where you can just set it free and be okay with it. Not always easy, but it's definitely, I think another thing too that's a big factor for me is how is this prop going to be used? Is it a distance prop? Is it something
Right.
that's going to be in the background that people won't get up close to? Because that changes everything the way I build it. If it's going to be something that kids get really close to or people can get up right up to, it's got to be done much better. And I'll take more time on the details. Then maybe the understructure is not as strong or as elaborate, and the details will be more something that I spend the time on. Where if it's at a distance, then I'll make sure that that doesn't have to carry as much weight as far as the details, because from a distance, it's going to look great. I can cover it with paint.
So many, many, many years ago, man discovered fire. They built the wheel. They built a computer with 4 megabytes of RAM on it that you use to.
I was
to
there.
Figure right.
Me and the caveman, man.
Exactly. And you made a transition into the digital world, and you have very much become a native of the digital world and everything that you create, and touching just about as many mediums digitally as you've done in the physical space. I think it might be helpful as just like a base starting point to talk about how you use the digital medium in your services on a Sunday basis, because I don't think that's a pretty typical thing, how you employ that for your kids services.
I love digital, and knowing that kids are pretty much raised in front of devices these days. We try to keep that a large part of what we do on Sunday mornings with the kids to keep them actively engaged. So I created, okay, so I am digital, but I have my limits.
Oh, no.
I created
confession
I
time.
created DVD every week
I
to play in
totally
the
forgot about that.
service.
But,
That's
yeah,
right.
okay, fair enough.
So to go fully digital, we haven't made that jump yet. But I create a DVD every week that we play for the kids, and that's from the time service starts to the altar music. It plays all the way through, and that allows us to come out and preach. It's got preaching time. We have intro, outro to our speaking times. In between, we have videos that come up on the screen, animations, telling Bible stories, things like that. Then it comes where I come back out and preach a little longer. It outros me, and then it goes into maybe a puppet on the screen, and then it goes into a live game that we play with the kids. So nothing lasts more than 5 or 7 minutes, and it goes all the way through, everything pointing to whatever the topic is that we're talking about to lead to the altar call. And then we pray with the kids at the altar with the altar music still on the DVD, and then the parents are there to pick them up at the end.
So you're one of the very, very rare pastors that sees the clock on the back screen and actually has to pay attention. Because the next section is coming.
I can't chase a rabbit. If I chase a rabbit, I can't. They have to stop the DVD, and then that just gets really awkward.
It's incredible. I know, like watching some of the services, being there, it's been as an adult, like, man, I really wish I could have been a kid at Grand Rapids first. And it's nuts because, like, Pastor Troy, like, there are moments where like a video will play and you hop behind stage and you're gathering up materials and different things for a game, and as soon as that's over, you hop back behind stage again. And depending on whatever the service required, you might bring out a puppet or a different type of illustration, and so it's like constant go go go. It's almost like, in some ways, it's kind of a theatrical production. You got to hit your mark at certain points. And I know, like, if I, as adult, am looking at this and going like, man, all I had was flannel graph. I wish I had this. I know the kids are absolutely enjoying what you're creating for them.
It's for us, for me, number one, I am ADHD, so I can only speak for so long, right?
Sure.
and not and not get bored with myself. So I
Right.
have to break it up for me, for that.
Right.
And I know the kids the same way. Kids' attention spans less than 5 minutes, and so
yeah.
we try to honor that and give them some breaks where they can digest the things that we're saying. Gives them a little break to stretch, do something, yell, whatever they got to do. We get them to yell on from stuff on the screen, stuff like that. It lets that out, and man, it's amazing how much it helps with discipline in the room. I mean,
Sure.
we'll have 150, 200 kids in the room at a time. And I mean, this is from 2nd grade to 5th grade. So you can imagine, they can get pretty antsy, but keeping it to where it's 5 to 7 minutes at the longest has really helped us keep discipline in the room. And hopefully, I mean, the message is getting through. Like I said, we do a game show where we talk about the things that we've learned throughout the series. And so it helps us gauge how much they're actually receiving and taking in.
Wow.
And amazingly, they do it. So,
Right. And sort of along the videos that play over the course of the entire service and everything, a lot of it is obviously custom content that you've made, featuring reoccurring characters. You basically have made your own VeggieTales cast at this point that the kids of Grand Rapids First grow up with, right?
Yes. And we try to change those out as the years go,
Sure.
Some of them are just easy for me to do just because, it started with just my voice. So
Sure.
I can't change me now. So I have to fix somebody else, get somebody else's voice in there.
Yeah,
But
you've used my voice a few times if I remember.
I have used your voice.
Yes.
You were a strawberry, bro.
I was a strawberry. What did I say? Oh man. For a
You
minute
did
there,
a
that
scripture
clip was,
for us.
yeah, there was a couple clips going around the church, I think, of me like as a strawberry saying something.
A Jamaican strawberry at that.
Oh no!
Come on.
I hope that
Hear that.
never surfaces.
So for those who
will.
are listening,
It
we've
will.
got cactus, we've got we got a shark, we've got a box, and this is
He's a
like
boxer.
layered illustrations.
gosh.
Again, not just not just MS Paint.
these
We got
are-
a pickle with depth and shading and texture. I mean,
And these are not just flat illustrations. These are character models, most of which you can like move around and make talk and walk around and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yes. Yep. I always wanted to be a 3D animator, when 3D animation became something I was familiar with doing, but I could never really fall into that. So I found 2.5D animation where I can take the illustrations that I draw and things like that, and really I could put a bone structure to them and bring those to life in the software that I use. Man, it just opened up the world of animation for me. And the cool thing is that was always a dream and a goal of mine. And now I'm actually a part of the software. So I was a contributor to the software that I actually get to use now. So it was a goal. I got there. I mean, to think that I always wanted to do it, I never kept hitting the wall, but now I could actually say I'm part of an animation software.
Right.
That's amazing.
It was a pretty
I didn't know
cool
that.
achievement, So that's
Yeah. And so
What
for
software
people
is
who may be
Yeah.
interested, what is your workflow for making characters like this?
I design. Usually, I design in vector. I use Affinity Designer, which
Okay.
news today they just got acquired by Canva.
I did hear by Canva bought them.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. So
We'll see where that
I
goes.
still use
Canva's
Adobe
trying to
product.
punch up at Adobe. We'll see. I'm voting for any underdog, although I'm conflicted on Canva. I don't like touching it.
Exactly. Man.
Regardless.
The Affinity world is up in arms. But anyway, so I do use Adobe products as well. But Affinity has kind of been my illustration because I can do it all on the iPad. So that's a good
Gotcha.
workflow for me. So I've designed it all on the iPad. Bring it into a software called Moho. And what Moho is a 2.5D software. You could bring in illustrations, kind of split it up like Character Animator is in Adobe in layers, but you can add a bone structure to it. And then you can have inverse kinetics and all that kind of stuff, which allows you to move arms and limbs and things like that. And then you could just animate through there. So
cool.
Troy, you've said the phrase 2.5D a couple times. Could you explain that a little bit? What does 2.5D mean?
2.5D is when you take a 2D illustration and you spread it out in with depth to it. So now that when a face turns, which is a 2D illustration, the nose is off of the face. So when it turns, it allows it to look like it's 3-dimensional. It gives it dimension. So it doesn't just look like a flat drawing like I drew it. It actually looks like it has depth and dimension, kind of like the illustrations you guys were showing. So I can actually bring those to life. Most people think that the animations that I do are actually 3D, but it's just 2.5D. Yeah.
That's
A
crazy.
bunch of effectively postcards that have a little bit of depth to them that they're moving back and forth.
Just like After Effects works in layers, and you have depth in that, same thing. You can do that, but now I can add bone structure to it so that when the front of the face turns, the back of the head, and it kind of orbits around each other.
That's crazy. So I have a 2-part question just to try and continue to keep this as practical as people, because I don't know how many children's pastors are animating their own 3 illustrated characters, 2.5D. First question is, how many people do you have on your team, or what does your team look like that puts hands on this kind of component of your ministry?
We have 3 full-time members of the children's ministry here, and my wife is a full-time, but she's not paid for what she does. You know?
She's a committed volunteer.
She gets to marry me. That's payment enough.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, so and then what? And the cool thing is, which we talked about time management, is Pastor Anissa, which is my associate children's pastor. She takes on a lot of the writing as far as scripting and sermon writing and things like that. And so she helps out a ton of that, which gives me time to create the things that only I can do, you know. So, and Miss Sharon, which is our associate, she helps make all that stuff happen. So she's calling the volunteers, she's lining all it up. So I don't have to necessarily take all of that time. They give me that time back so we can create, we can animate, we can make custom coloring pages and all the other things that we do. So
that's good to know. Yeah, so that's helpful to kind of give context to your capacity, you know. So then beyond that, we see a large circumference of resources that are available. Like, I think of Orange is a very, very popular children's resource that where they're literally a company dedicated to creating content for children's pastors who don't have the capacity to do everything in-house like you guys are doing. Maybe it's advice, maybe it's the way you think about it. Why would you invest the time into creating kind of custom content versus using fully pre-made and investing your time elsewhere? Like, what's that decision look like for you guys?
Well, for us, it's, it's all bathed in prayer, not to get super spiritual, but it's all bathed in prayer, the things that we want to teach the kids. I asking God, okay, God, what do the kids need to hear? We do have set markers that we want to hit every year too, to make sure that the kids are learning certain things. So by the time they leave us from kids ministry, they have a solid biblical understanding of Bible knowledge that they can take on with them, hopefully for the rest of their life. So those are goals that we set in place. And definitely there are curriculums out there that can help us make that happen. But there again, too, I don't think as a minister and an artist, I don't think I would be as fulfilled by just using somebody else's work.
Sure.
And I don't want to sound horrible, negative in this way, but a lot of times when I look at other people's stuff, I just can't go forward knowing that, hey, I could add to this. I can make this more just by the giftings and the things that I feel God's given me. So I can in good sometimes I do. Sometimes I put it out there. It's like, hey, that's good. I can use that. But I can't always just say, okay, I'll just take this for what it is. I got to tweak, I got to twist. And we do use some ideas from other people's curriculums and ministries and stuff like that. We definitely use that a lot. There's no way we can produce all kinds of custom content for every Sunday. I mean, that's basically me making all the custom content. I don't have that kind of time, so.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's the same way that we feel about like ready-made media or media that we can, that has been pre-created for sermon series or something like that. It's not that it's a bad thing. It's an amazing service for people who need it.
Exactly.
But for those of us who have the capacity to create, I think there's, like you said, there's an element of speaking into your calling that comes from recognizing what you have the capacity for.
Definitely. That's a great point.
Yeah. But that being said, I think a lot of times people get lost in even what is my capacity? How do you determine what your capacity is with the support of the rest of your team?
Yeah, I think that came just from experience and time, learning what I can and can't. And it hasn't always been good. I mean, I became a workaholic. If we're going to be honest, it got to where it was more of a negative than a positive because I couldn't put it down. I would leave here, the office at 5, 6. And not that the church caused me to do it. It was just my drive to do things and want to do more and make it the best I could possibly do. I would go home and work till 10 o'clock at night. And then on Fridays, my day off, I'm working on something. And Saturdays, I'm working on something. Mm-hmm. And it's very unhealthy. And I got caught in that big hamster wheel of always outdoing myself. And I don't think God shined on that. So I had to recognize that, hey, you know what, Troy? You're doing a good job is okay. It doesn't have to be the best. You don't have to compete with Disney. You're a one-man show with a lot of this stuff. You don't have to do that. So take it, take the skills, the things I've given you, Troy, and just you do it unto me. That's what I felt like God finally said to me. Do it unto me. Don't do it to the world so they can see how good you are. Don't do it so that your bosses are impressed. Don't do it to impress the kids. Do it for me. And when I begin to do that, I begin to get better perspective. Sure, I still love to do it, and I still have to rein myself in. But I think at that point is when I really got fulfillment in the things I was doing, and I'm not chasing the next big thing. I want to put out good ideas and good content.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's cool. I like that.
I've got a handful of questions in regards to actually, making the stuff that you make. These are things that Caleb wants to know, and other things that I think maybe other people might be interested in knowing. When you talk about the animating world, you have a large library of content that you have animated at this point, and it sounds like you use Moho to do that.
Yes.
And from what I've seen from at least a lot of your workflow, we're talking about keyframes. We are moving objects back and forth. I've seen, I believe Adobe Character Animator has a system that allows you to do an amount of effectively face tracking and live record. It's stuff like we've talked about on this podcast before as what could be a lower barrier of entry for maybe kids pastors, youth pastors trying to get into that kind of thing. Have you experimented with that? Do you do any of that kind of thing, or have you not yet touched that?
No, I have. I've messed with it. I've actually used it on several occasions. It's just, it gets to where some of those softwares can't give you the smoothest animation. And that just goes back to preference for me. Now that I've kind of learned about animation and, started honing that craft a little bit, I know I can get it to look better, a little smoother. But there again, too, it all comes to the time frame. I got to spit this out. I got to make this happen. And there are tools and things that help you speed up the process. Lip sync is the thing that takes the most amount of time. Because I can actually build looping moves where the character maybe gestures the hands and does different things and build a loop. It's a 70 frame loop, and I can build 20 of those, and then they always end on the same pose, so I can just string those together and then add a lip sync on top of it, so it makes it come alive. So I could just keep using the same stuff. So it's only animated once, and then I could just string them together. So there are tricks of the trade to make it happen.
That's a very common technique in pretty much every animated show.
Exactly.
They only needed to draw Peter Griffin like this once, and then they could just use that forever.
Use it over and over again. Exactly.
Caleb, who's Peter Griffin? We don't watch that show.
Not that it's a maybe sanctified example that I would recommend, but South Park certainly comes to mind of when they're in season, they're making an episode every week. And obviously they've got a big team, but they implement a lot of those same things. Obviously their art style is about as simple as you can get, but it doesn't take much to flip between already drawn character poses and move them back and forth and whatnot.
During the pandemic, I really had to hone that skill in because we were putting out a show on YouTube, which I couldn't use anybody else's content when I had to do all this custom content. Yeah. So I really had to figure out ways, and I used the Adobe animators, character animator and all that kind of stuff to help me just crank out material. That was a beast. That was a very taxing time as far as that goes.
You put like 10 weeks of content out, if I remember that.
I think so.
That's
a lot of
it was
work,
a
man.
ton.
We know very well how much work that is.
It was a ton of work.
Yeah.
My next question, because it is a permanent part of basically every podcast that we have these days, is I'm curious, Caleb Wyman is curious, what Troy Picou's perspective on AI generated content. Is this something that you're using in any capacity? Are you anti-AI, or are you using it in some capacity, or are you all in? How do you feel about it?
I'm pro AI, but I use it I see it as to me, it's another creative in the room. I use it as just another person helping me come up with ideas, helping me organize my ideas. I built a marble racetrack that we use in our current series, and we do marble racing before our series services. And I used AI to help me program. It's all built with an Arduino system, and I used AI to help me program. So it has an automatic start gate. It has 10 random tracks that play every time the marbles race. The whole track lights up when you press the start button. It has the fastest lap, and also it keeps the fastest lap of the day. And it helped me program all of that and make it all happen.
Super cool.
So to me, if at this point in my life, to try to learn how to code all of that, this project would not be done for another 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But I was able to throw that program together with a few nights of, I had to beat my head on the table a few times, like,
Sure.
you fixed it, but then you took this out, put it back, come on, saving 30 renditions of the code because it would take something out, add something in, but it worked. I eventually got there, which I would have never done without. So I am pro AI. I get where the artists come in and are freaked out by it and see where it could do that. But man, I see where we can use it, and it could be huge. Voiceovers, we talked about that earlier, how I was all of the characters. Now I use AI for all my voiceovers, and I can have any voice I want. So to me, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I just literally yesterday I was looking at an AI that you punch in basically a genre, lyrics, or ideas for like subject matters and whatnot, and within a minute it will spit out 3-minute tracks that they are far from the best thing I've ever heard.
Right.
But for the background of a video project or whatever, or
Totally
even
usable.
like a Sunday morning kids worship sort of thing, if you need a song for a specific message, or
Yes.
totally good enough for something like that.
Totally.
Yeah.
I use it to help me write scripts too for puppet
Totally.
skits and things like that. So I mean, I use it a lot. It's I use the paid version, a few of them, and I could not pay somebody to give me the amount of work that AI gives me what I'm paying AI. And it's just I couldn't afford that.
Yeah.
I mean, it gives me high quality stuff, that I couldn't afford to get from somebody else. So I'm in.
That's good to know. That's AI will be an ongoing conversation probably for the rest of our lives. So we're getting a head start on it. And I know we've made a couple allusions to it now at this point already, and you even talked about that 10-week series that we did, way back in COVID times, the before times. Blackbar, we try to, as often as we can, talk about the potential of digital ministry and trying to help churches realize sort of the assets and the tools that they already have and moving them online. When we move into the area of children's ministry, things get slightly more complicated. Obviously, we could probably pull up a dozen reports of the, we'll say, complex effect that staring at screens all day can have on children, not even to mention the worlds of social media and constant, content consumption and everything like that. There's many people, I know friends that are not going to let their kids touch an iPad until they're basically middle school, high school, or anything like that. I'm curious from a kids pastor's perspective, and also a creative that makes digital content and consumes a lot of digital content or whatever. What's your perspective on making content for kids online? Is that something we should be encouraging, that we should be trying to do? And if so, how do we do it well?
I definitely think we should encourage it and try to do it. Just because, I mean, though your friend, has vowed to not let their kid touch an iPad, I would say that's not the norm, especially with my experience with kids ministry. I mean, parents are so busy today, trying to make ends meet and things like that. It's the babysitter in the home. It's what used to be the big brother or the big sister is now the iPad, right? Here, play with your friend,
right?
And here it is, And so Siri is their friend. So anyway, but they, Mom, I want to play with Siri. Siri, come out to play.
Probably be not too long.
So yes, so exactly. So we definitely need to be in that space as the church, and especially the kids. I mean, all we got to do is open up, the internet today and see that the world is targeting kids. I mean, if you don't believe that, then you're totally missing it. They are targeting our kids, and they're getting younger and younger with the target age every year. So we as the church need to be in that space, and we need to be making that happen. I think where we have the disconnect a lot of times is the church's product that we put out can kind of sometimes feel subpar. Now, we do have a lot of good stuff coming out, but just for any church to jump in and throw something online, I don't know if that necessarily is the answer, to flood the online space with a lot of poor quality stuff.
Right.
I don't want
There's plenty of that already.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That part is full. And so for a parent to say, okay, here, put this on, and it's just a lot of talking head in an old sanctuary with a curtain behind them, talking about something. I just don't know if that's going to be the thing to win the next generation. Though I do believe God can do anything. He can use anything. Don't get me wrong. But I do believe that the church needs to invest in putting our best foot forward to reach the next generation with quality content.
Right. We've talked many times about God can use a donkey, but he used one because he had to, right? And if we could put a better tool in his hand, then that should be the option. Right.
If he would have had a stallion, he probably would have used it.
Right. There's obviously content that exists out there that is not, that's secular content that is very effectively reaching.
Definitely.
Kids.
Yeah.
We've finally recently discovered Bluey in our house.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Uh-oh.
It's the first kids content that doesn't make me want to rip my eyes out, other than that it's actually making me feel things I was not expecting to be watching the feeling during a kids program, right? But there is excellent kids content out there that is making meaningful I would say in the case of Bluey,
teaching good values,
impacts,
teaching kids things that they need to know and learn that they may be not getting from other places. There are definitely things that not necessarily Christian or identified as church content that's very good and very positive for kids to learn and grow.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we definitely need to be in that space. So.
Yeah, for sure.
Agreed.
Well, Troy, as we land today's conversation, we always like to make time for our guests to do a little shameless self-promo. And I feel like your job is basically your shameless self-promo. But outside of your job, is there anything else that you're working on that people can follow you or see your content, or anything that you just want to promo that's been an inspiration to you lately?
You can find me on socials, on Instagram, my name, Troy Picou, and I'm also Troy Picou The Works. On YouTube and Facebook, so you can find me there, and you could follow my works and my projects that I'm doing. Right now, I'm working on some. What am I working on right now? I just finished the marble track, so I'm moving back into 3D printing some animatronic stuff. Working on an animatronic.
What a
parrot.
Crazy statement from a
You still doing
pastor.
you still doing the mice and stuff? The church mice?
I'm working on the mice is. Got one done, but now I'm working on an animatronic parrot, and I'm gonna I'm working on a.
The man who can make anything. Guys.
Oh,
Right.
Have you guys heard of ESP? It's a controller board. ESP now is a controller boards that can talk to one another without using Bluetooth or Wi-Fi or anything like that. So going to build a controller where the parrot can sit on your shoulder and you can have a small handheld controller in your pocket.
My gosh.
Control.
That's amazing. So we should be expected a pirate-related theme.
Oh,
Well, I
man.
actually see there was one of the cutoffs I was building him for. You showed a pirate ship that I built. I just did the pirate theme, and the bird got cut. So
Bummer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Troy, I think we could probably talk your ear off. We love hearing these stories and what you're creating. So thank you for taking some time out of your life to share about everything that you've been called to do in ministry. So as we land today's episode, just a reminder, check out Troy on social media. And then also, if you like this episode, the content in it, likes, comment, and subscribe wherever you're listening, watching, or otherwise doing a third thing, as I discussed last week. And then, of course, beyond today's conversation and podcast, if you need any help or support, whether that's free or paid, you can check out our Discord to connect with our community and have more conversations along these lines. Or if you need our help creating something, you can contact Blackbar Productions. You can check out our website at blk.bar.
Early on the logo.
If you need high quality visual content like you just saw, you can connect with us. And hey, if you need Troy Picou to make you something, I mean, we could probably hook you up.
We can
We
make
could
that
probably
work.
hook you up. You need a transformer? Troy could turn that around in a week and a half, right?
Depends on your budget.
Yeah, depends on the budget. But hey, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next time. And hey, enjoy this weekend. Easter is a phenomenal season. Just take time to breathe and be a part of all that God's doing in your ministry so that you can show others who God is this weekend.
And then take a vacation. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Use those PTO days. Until next time, guys, we will see you around.